Ladies and gentlemen, we've got major updates here today, including a very likely story when it comes to trade threats with Canada. So, a few days ago, Donald Trump completely cut off communication with the Canadians when it came to negotiating a potential new trade deal. Right now, we do have several different tariffs on Canada, including on their steel. There's some significant auto tariffs that I think are probably going to be remaining on Canada. But Trump said, we're done. We will just tell you whatever the tariff we want to impose on you guys because you guys have a tax on technology on our companies that we don't like. And we're pissed off. And the same thing the EU did. And I said, well, this for sure is going to be resolved by Canada rescinding that tax. Canada caves on Trump's demands within less than 24 hours. Canada rescinds digital services tax to advance broader trade negotiations with the United States. And so there it is. And it's always, when it comes to something like this, you can say, well, it's a very small victory. Doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. But this is what Trump does. He doesn't care about being mean to an ally. If there is something and Trump's people go to him and they say they have this on, we can basically extort this country because we have supreme control over them when it comes to trade. They're way more reliant on us than we are of them. And so we want this tax removed. And the tax is going to be removed because we're the United States of America. And you're just going to have to deal with it. There is no fair negotiations. We are stronger than you. You are way more reliant on us. This is how it works now. That's basically what Trump says. That's why Trump is such a strong leader. And that's why sometimes allies don't like him. Because Donald Trump, it's not, I want to be fair to everyone. It's, I want what's best for the United States. And so this is another example of this. We saw what happened with the European Union, where they were not negotiating fairly. Trump wanted them to reevaluate how they were negotiating and what they were demanding and said, we're going to tariff you 50%. And they said, you know what? We will appease you. We will negotiate in a way in which you deem acceptable, or at least more acceptable in terms of our requests. And so the renegotiation happened with the European Union, and we'll see if that tariff deal ends up getting done, or I guess the trade deal ends up getting done. There's still going to be tariffs on a lot of these countries, including the European Union, but there is a deadline. It's July 9th, which is the deadline to when Trump first paused the Liberation Day tariffs. He brought them all down to a global 10% flat rate. And that's why we see deals happen with the UK and with China. And now the rumor, there's very likely going to be an India deal within the coming weeks. And I would imagine a lot of these countries, but Trump has said, we're just going to throw our tariff out, and whatever it is, you're going to have to accept it, because some of these countries we trade with in terms of, the total trade output, such a little amount, it really doesn't matter whether or not we come to an actual trade deal. We're just going to tariff you at a certain rate. The tariffs on a lot of these countries are going to remain at least at around 10%. Trump understands that based off of the reaction from the economy and from the inflation, that he can potentially get away with 10% global tariffs, 30% tariffs on China, 25% auto tariffs that significantly affect Mexico and Canada, and not deal with those tariffs becoming super inflationary. You can skim an extra $200 or $300 billion in US revenue off of the tariffs without the corporations raising their prices within the United States. It's all about a balancing act. Now, some people say, well, we haven't seen the actual effect on the tariffs because there's a 6 months, 12 months lag to them, and we will deal with stagnation. And that was the reason for the contraction in quarter 1. But that really wasn't. The reason was because of the importers, the amount of goods that got imported to the United States to try and fast track it before the tariffs were imposed and put into place. And another reason that happened is because Trump did not spend like Biden did. Otherwise, we would have zero contraction. All Trump had to do was print more money, and we weren't going to have the horrible contraction that they claim about that was minus 0.5% quarter 1 GDP. Now we're going to have a 4.5% growth rate in quarter 2. Some of that is returning to the norm in terms of the imports versus exports, and them not trying to front run the tariffs. But we have to understand that Trump is encouraged with the data that we're seeing. And because of that, he is going to keep a lot of these tariffs on, whether it's 10% against India and the Pacific states, whether it's 30% against China, which is right now the agreed upon deal that China and their ministry, they've confirmed it, And so this is really just what's going on. But the thing is with Canada, it's just another example. Canada caves to something that Trump was told. This is, people tell him, you can get them. They're so reliant on us that you can just say, we're done with you. We're not going to negotiate. And Canada, you can say, well, Canada's going to call their bluff. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't, because Trump has already proven in the past he can put a 50% tariff on a country and be done with it. Now, he may end up going back on it, but Canada doesn't want to deal with this. That's why when Canada first tried to fight back against the U.S. tariff and do some type of retaliatory tariffs, it wouldn't have mattered, because they're so much more reliant on us than we are of them. And this is something that is small. It's a measly digital service tax. And the Canadians are like, all right, we would like to keep it on. We really can't afford to do that because we're very reliant on the United States. And this would be very stupid. We'd be shooting ourselves in the foot to not try and renegotiate if Trump just says, we're going to slap on 70% tariffs on you and be done with it. That's very bad for Canada. They want to put in retaliatory tariffs. Go ahead. You're losing because of your reliance on the United States in terms of your deficit. Well, we have a massive deficit with them. In terms of your surplus with us, you're very reliant on our consumer base. So you don't want that. You don't want to get into a tariff war with the United States if you're Canada, even if you're China. You don't want to do that. So the point here now, China could certainly overcome it because they've got other avenues. With Canada, where they're located, they need the United States as a major trading partner. But this is just the reality, and this is what Trump likes to do in terms of using the United States and our strength to our advantage in terms of these smaller countries. There's certain things they're trying to skim, just like the European Union, with how unfair their trading practices are in terms of their tax, and it's the VATs, value added tax on U.S. goods, and really any foreign goods that come into their country, which makes U.S. goods less competitive in European markets. I wonder what's going to happen with the VATs, because that's basically the same thing as a tariff. So we'll have to see. But either way, you've also got this big news. You've got Scott Bessent saying they're working to select a new Fed chair for Jerome Powell and whoever his replacement's going to be in the coming weeks. Now, Powell's term ends in May of 2026. So it ends in a little bit less than a year. We know Powell has been very stubborn and has certainly with what Trump is saying. Trump had a handwritten note for Powell today. It's gotten really bad and really ugly. He said, you need to cut. This is crazy. Look at all these other countries that have cut with higher inflation. We've tamed the inflation. Even your core inflation is at 2.4%. That's the Fed model, is the core inflation. And the core in the first 3 out of the first 4 months has been lower than the expected. The inflation is tamed. The trueflation is even lower. You include energy, and now it's going to drop even further with crude oil going back down after the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. So there has to be, and even liberals now agree, there has to be at least one rate cut, likely more than that. Trump said he wants 1 to 2% interest rates. I don't think you're going to get 1% rates, but I could see 2% interest rates by mid-2026 very easily. People say, well, Trump can't do this. You can't technically remove him. You need the Senate. Well, it's very vague. Technically, if Trump puts serious political pressure on Powell to step down, and there has to be some type of malice that's found to remove Powell before his term is up in mid-2026. It has been rumored that Powell, he says, yes, I hate Trump. Yes, I'm not going to do this. Yes, I cut for Kamala in 2024 in September. We dropped it by 0.5, not 0.25, 0.5, the rates. He wanted to supercharge the economy. That was September. What was in November? It was the election. And the inflation rates were, any of the metrics will tell you. The only thing they could argue, I guess, is GDP or just maybe tariff speculation. But the tariff speculation, with an agreement with the number one biggest trade partner in China, the tariff speculation should go away in terms of what Trump's going to do. Obviously, Trump has a plan for the tariffs. It's blatantly obvious. He's going to keep probably around 10% tariff on select countries when we do these trade deals. He's keeping the 30% tariff on China. It has not been inflationary. And liberals said it would be, and they said that we would be in a recession. And we're going to have a 4.5% growth rate in Q2, and we're going to stabilize everything. And by the way, we get a 4.5% growth rate in Q2. Imagine we get rate cuts. What is that going to do? The S&P has already fully recovered without rate cuts with low inflation. So Bessent, imagine Bessent gets in the next 3 weeks, emergency rate cut, emergency 0.5 rate cut. And then there's going to be multiple rate cuts. And people say, well, this is bad because Sen will do whatever Trump says. You can't have someone that's biased as the chair of the Fed. Well, Powell's been biased against Trump this entire time. And I honestly was like, all right, I can understand with Powell in terms of the issue with Powell was he's been wrong on everything. You know, he said it was going to be immediately inflationary. He said it was a bad move. Liberals have been to this point, and they can say, well, it's coming. All of the bad metrics are coming in the next 6 to 12 months because of these tariffs. So far, they've been wrong on everything. The only thing they can say is we project, just like they projected 3 months ago, that we were going to be in a recession. They've shut up about it because of the Atlanta Fed and their projection of a plus 4.5% growth rate in Q2. But they can only project. None of the metrics, I mean, look at the blue collar wage growth, the best in 90 years with Trump. There's other companies, and now you see some of these companies saying, Trump, if you're serious on these tariffs, we will build domestically. We don't want to pay them. And Trump says, yeah, I'm serious. Get more jobs. We want high quality jobs in the United States. This is amazing what's going on. That's why we see, Texas Instruments. We see some of these automakers now come back to the U.S. And I mean, that's great for the Rust Belt. It's really electorally something that you want to do if you're Trump in terms of revitalizing the auto industry. There's a lot of even liberal support for that. So the point of it is listen, Powell has been a real disappointment. And it's unfortunate because back in 2018, Trump did, endorse Powell and have him stay on. He was originally appointed, I believe, under Obama. And then in 2022, his time was up again. It's 4-year terms. And then Biden reappointed him in 2022 as well. So he's been here a while. But at this point, we're not sure we can wait until May of 2026. I can understand that, all right, we can't have the 1% rates right now. Although, honestly, you could probably do it and get away with it. There's other markets that we would like to see come down a little bit before we go to 1% rates, like housing. But we should not be at 4.5% interest rates right now. It's absurd based on the tamed inflation. And so that's the real point of it, and we'll have to see. You've also got Zoran Mamdani, who, by the way, liberals are just, or like the core Democrat base, they have no clue how to handle Mamdani. They know this is an electoral bombshell, and it's radioactive, and they don't want to touch it. And even Hakeem Jeffries is like, I'm not endorsing him. I can't do that because it's just not smart for me in terms of my electoral chances and just my standing within the Democratic Party. And then this was a crazy clip with Mamdani to where the CNN anchor is like, I mean, why do you want commie grocery stores? And then Mamdani's like, oh no, it's just a test. It's a trial program. And which is exactly what it is. And then look at this woman. This woman is just completely clueless. She tries to narrate this. Look at what she says. This exchange is like a cartoon. Zoran, here's a detailed explanation of how we can make groceries more affordable. Meanwhile, his detailed explanation is commie grocery stores running a pilot program. That's the sophisticated, detailed, oh my God, the grocery stores, these capitalist grocery stores and their 1.3% profit margins, oh my goodness. Oh. And then the CNN anchor's like, so you want commie grocery stores? And she's right. That's exactly what he's proposing. He says, well, we want to start with 5 different commie grocery stores, and they all offer just bland crap. And then all the other grocery stores, because the way that I mean, let's be honest with Mamdani. Trump called him a communist. People say, well, that's just because Trump exaggerates. No, Mamdani said they need to seize the means of production. That's not democratic socialism. Mamdani has to say he's a democratic socialist because, it's actually illegal to be a communist and run for political office in the United States because of the Communism Act in 1954. So he says now, the thing is with the United States and how capitalist we are as a society, when you admit you're a democratic socialist, you're very likely a communist. Now, not all the time, but socialism is a gateway to communism. It's basically the baby version. And if you're talking about seizing the means of production, now I don't know when that video was when he said that. It could have been a little while ago. That's not what democratic socialism is. That's Marxism. That's communism. Seizing the means of production. And so what this is and what's going to happen, it's almost like you want it to happen because even the Democrats, when you've got Hakeem Jeffries basically saying, I don't want to endorse him. I mean, have you guys seen the numbers of who voted in NYC? Do you know who got this guy elected? It was rich, spoiled, liberal 20-year-olds. The highest voter block in that election, the mayoral Democratic primary, was 18 to 24-year-olds. You know, Mondani, you can see with his past tweets, he has serious disdain for white people. He was born in Uganda. The people that got him elected were not blacks. Blacks voted for Cuomo by 40 points. Hispanics voted for Cuomo by 20 points. Rich, entitled white kids who have white guilt, who Mondani has openly said he doesn't like white people, they voted this dude in. And then they try and make it about, oh, it's because he doesn't cuck to Israel. No, this dude is he's a literal communist. He's talking about seizing the means of production. That's not democratic socialism. And he's talking, I mean, even the CNN anchor's like, so you want commie grocery stores that sell like chicken and rice? And he's like, no, we just want a trial program. Yeah, and then it's going to price out all the other grocery stores because, you know, it's subsidized by the government. So they've got a huge advantage. They mark everything down. And then you go to New York City and there's Commie Store 1. They sell rice and beans. Commie Store 2 sells rice and chicken. Commie Store 3 sells potatoes. You may get some potatoes. And there go all the other grocery stores. They don't want to compete. There's no competition. There's no competition. You're marking everything down. We make a 1.3% profit margin. That's what grocery stores make. What about all the small businesses that sell food items? So see, this is why it's just all total. And the craziest thing is the people that elected this dude they're like teenagers. The highest voter block in this mayoral primary was 18 to 24. So just understand the type of people, the way that this dude was elected. And that's really the reality with Mondani.
Project. It's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they're given. We have to continue to elect more socialists. And we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right? Or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production.
So the end goal is seize the means of production, and he says he's a democratic socialist, and he's open about it. And so this is a disaster for Democrats in New York, a complete disaster. But no, he's based. It is hilarious how obsessed these people are with Israel. You know, there are people that say, well, we support him because he's against Israel. Oh yeah, an immigrant that was born in Uganda is so based America first. Ugh, just ridiculous. But guys, the point here is that, you know, we're going to get some huge rate cuts if Bessent seriously comes in, and they're going to have to force Powell out. They're going to pressure him out. Unless Powell decides to cut, we need something done. I mean, this is just, and maybe Powell, because I know Powell at the last hearing changed his tune a little bit, said, all right, now we're going in a better direction. So maybe the cut will happen. Maybe an emergency cut will happen before July 30th. The meeting is July 30th. There's going to be, at worst, they're pressuring Powell to cut on the 30th. At worst, which is a month from today. So we'll see if he ends up doing it. But I mean, Trump is like writing handwritten letters to Powell saying, you need to cut. Look at all these other countries that cut, that have higher inflation. Trump is getting angry about this. And like I tell people, you cannot bet against the Trump economy. And whether you think, well, Trump, all of his tariffs are going to end up being inflationary, there's just a lag. Yeah, you've been wrong. Democrats have been wrong every time with anything that Trump does as it relates to the economy. And so we have all the indicators, we have all the metrics. These people, they have nothing. We have lower inflation. We have tamed inflation in part because of the Trump tariffs, the initial tariff reaction, the sell-off in the market. We've had continued low inflation in part because the energy prices have been low, but even the core inflation doesn't even track energy, doesn't even take into account the volatility of it. So Trump has tamed inflation. We had the contraction, very slight contraction in Q1. We're having a 4.5% growth rate, possibly Q2, at least 3.5%, hopefully. And, I mean, Q2 is about to be over, and then we'll get the actual estimate, the Q2 estimate. It comes out around, like, July 25th, maybe, or late July. But, look, it's just all of the stuff, all of these analytics, the metrics, they look very, very well for a rate cut. That's what I'll say. So guys, make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.